Aaron Katersky. We're live in Mobile, Alabama, where Katrina's wind shoves trees and wobbles lampposts. Rain cascades across the city. Water has flooded coastal areas already, and floodwaters are now creeping into downtown. National Hurricane Center meteorologist Richard Knapp says things are only going to get worse.
This is not just going to be a coastal event either. It's moving fast enough and it's strong and big enough to perhaps bring hurricane force winds well inland into central Mississippi during the next day or so.
ABC's David Curley is in Biloxi, Mississippi.
A number of trees around us are starting to bend. The rain is very heavy. It picked up a couple of hours ago and it's just been coming down. Along the waterfront, the surge had already come ashore. The beach was gone. The streets were flooded along the casinos, which were all evacuated here the night before.
Power is out in New Orleans, where 10,000 people have sought shelter in the Superdome. That roof is now leaking water. Katrina made landfall south of New Orleans along Grand Isle, Louisiana, and now continues its march north. We're live in Mobile. I'm Aaron Katersky. Now with more news, here's Doug Limerick.
The eye of the storm now just east of New Orleans. Besides all the wind and water damage, the hurricane also having a major effect on oil prices. Oil futures now over $70 a barrel. Of course, Gulf Coast refineries are shut down. The oil rigs out in the Gulf not pumping. Here's an energy analyst.
If there's minimal damage, production can be back fully on stream within a week. If there's substantial damage, then it can take months.
Gas prices may well surge upward to new record highs. One more note on the hurricane. Airports New Orleans, Biloxi, Mobile, Pensacola all closed.
The roof of the Superdome in New Orleans is said to be leaking badly, where about 10,000 people are sheltered from the worst of Hurricane Katrina. Power is out across the city. The eye of the storm is still south of New Orleans and appears to be veering away from the city.
Katrina appears to have adjusted its aim slightly, taking a bead now on the cities of Gulfport and Biloxi, Mississippi. It's not likely to hit New Orleans dead center, but the hurricane is still a menace for that city and for a wide area around.
It's moving fast enough and it's strong and big enough to perhaps bring hurricane force winds well inland into central Mississippi during the next day or so.
Richard Knapp at the National Hurricane Center. Far fewer people have evacuated from Biloxi than from New Orleans, and that may prove to be a big mistake. At the Storm Desk, Jim Hickey, ABC News.
The Superdome in New Orleans is under assault from the outer bands of Hurricane Katrina. The roof of the dome is leaking right onto the thousands of people who took shelter there. ABC's David Muir reports from the Superdome.
People are being moved to the end zone where they're protected from the seating above them, and they're being told to move quickly. These people came in just 24 hours ago with their blankets, their pillows, what few belongings they could carry, and now they're drenched under a waterfall.
Katrina is 40 miles southeast of New Orleans, which may be spared the brunt of the storm. Still, the powerful winds are tearing some of the slates off roofs in the French Quarter. The floodwaters 3 feet deep and rising in downtown Mobile, Alabama, after Hurricane Katrina came ashore south of New Orleans a few hours ago. There are also reports of scattered tornadoes all the way from Mobile to Pensacola, Florida. With continuing coverage, Hurricane Katrina, I'm Clarissa Douglas, ABC News.
And stay with KSL. We'll continue to watch it for you and report the very latest all morning. I tell you, dealing with that hurricane, we've had a lot of people tell us that, they've been in storms, and they've been in, Chris was just telling us she's been in a, class 3, level 3, and this one is a level 4, was downgraded, but even so, 150 mile an hour winds.
Just terrifying.
Well, it's ripping pieces of the Superdome off.
I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. A lot of people from that part of the country know what it's like as you anticipate a hurricane. You're picking all the lemons off the trees so they don't become projectiles. You boarding up the windows. You have it down to a science by now. And then you're getting the heck out of Dodge. But there are those quirky few who every time say, it's not going to be a big deal, and they stick around.
They're going to ride it out.
Sometimes it costs them their lives.
Yeah, that is not a good decision. We'll continue to follow the hurricane for you. 370,000 people now still without power, and no air conditioning in the Superdome where it's leaking, and the people are in the stands.
And the news at this hour is sponsored by Walmart. Always low prices, always.
KSL News Time, 7:23.
I'm Sherry. Preston. Hurricane Katrina downgraded to a Category 2 storm as it moves northward, but that still means winds of over 100 miles an hour and flooding because of all the rain. New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin says at least one levee has been breached.
It sounds to me like that area has been overwhelmed by the water that is trying to get through, and that could cause some significant issues.
ABC's Jim Ryan has more live from New Orleans. Jim?
Sharing this moment, another great rush of wind is tearing through the downtown skyline, sending rain and debris flying.
Many of the windows on the upper floors of the skyscrapers have been blown out. Emergency operations agencies are sorting out various reports of flooding around the city and building failures. We're still very much in storm mode. Jerry.
ABC's Jim Ryan live from New Orleans. ABC's Aaron Katersky is in Mobile, Alabama, where the winds are still bearing down as well. He also joins us live.
Katrina just won't quit, Sherry. Power is out here and for tens of thousands across the city. We've seen street lights just kind of dangling by wires. Intense wind keeps blowing the rain horizontally. Trees and utility poles are swaying from side to side, and watching it all, people who evacuated their homes in New Orleans and hope to avoid all this.
Oh, man, chaos. Chaos, yes. It took me forever to get out.
And now he's going to be here a while. Sherry?
ABC's Aaron Katersky live from Mobile, Alabama. A promise from the president, who is in Arizona today.
I want the folks there on the Gulf Coast to know that the federal government is prepared to help you when the storm passes.
Katrina is already having an impact on oil prices and soon to be gas prices. President Bush says he knows.
I wish I could just snap my fingers and lower the price of gasoline for you. The markets don't work that way. I'd be snapping if I could do it.
White House spokesman Scott McClellan says it's too soon to tell if the U.S. needs to dip into the strategic oil reserve for some relief. Moneyscope, Dow up 68, NASDAQ up 17, a barrel of crude trading today at $66.50. You're listening to ABC News.
KSL News Time 12:11. Toppled power lines and buildings fallen over. There's some of the damage that we're hearing about in Louisiana and other Gulf states. Hurricane Katrina has been downgraded. Let's go live to the region, though, where it swept through in the last few hours. And on the KSL Newsline from the New Orleans area, ABC News correspondent Jim Ryan. Jim, thanks for coming on Utah's Noon News here on KSL. How bad was it?
Yeah, it was very bad, Russ. New Orleans did not take the direct hit that so many people had dreaded, but it took enough of a glancing blow that property damage is very high here. I've seen a lot of windows that were blown out in some of the skyscrapers here in downtown. A lot of roof damage. The roofing material was flying through the air at the height of the storm. Even now, when great big gusts of wind on the backside of the storm come up, you'll see stuff flying down the street, Russ.
Describe for us, Jim, what it looks like outside. You're still getting that pounding rain, or has most of the storm moved on beyond New Orleans?
Still getting a lot of rain, just a drenching, pounding rain driven along by very high winds. Even now, several hours after landfall, and the eye of the storm passed to the west, or rather to the east of the city. So, the storm is far from over. It's going to last several more hours at least.
The first sign that residents will have of whether or not their neighborhoods are safe is probably not going to be till tomorrow or the next day, right, Jim? I mean, emergency workers, I assume, won't be getting out on the streets to kind of survey the damage for a little while.
That's right. The risk of being hit by flying debris is still great, and curfews are still in effect for the overnight hours, and so it's very unlikely that the people who evacuated the area are going to be able to get back in anytime soon to take a look and see what happened.
The mayor was concerned over the weekends as he forced people to get out of their homes and leave that city that's below sea level. He was concerned about this being just the storm of the century or once-in-a-lifetime event. It's seeming that it wasn't that bad then, Jim, right?
Not quite as bad, no. The doomsday scenario had a direct hit on New Orleans, and a great rush of water from the Gulf of Mexico, 25, 30 feet high, and then Lake Pontchartrain overflowing its banks and coming down into the city as well. That did not happen, but still there's a lot of flooding here and a lot of damage to be assessed, and a lot of people still to be rescued from their roofs, quite frankly.
ABC News correspondent Jim Ryan, live on the KSL Newsline from New Orleans. Jim, thanks so much. Stay safe out.
As Katrina moves inland, it is quickly losing its nerve. It is now a Category 2. However, the storm, with its 105-mile-per-hour winds, still packs a punch. Katrina is about 40 miles southwest of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, moving north at 17 miles an hour, leaving a swath of destruction in its wake.
Getting reports that buildings are collapsing throughout the city.
Ray Nagin is the mayor of New Orleans. The power company in Louisiana says much of the state is without power, calling the damage significant. At the storm desk, Jim Hickey, ABC News.
With continuing coverage, Hurricane Katrina. Larry Jacobs, ABC News.
From ABC News, I'm Sherry Preston.
It's pretty crazy. Never seen anything like it. I'm scared.
She just moved to Mobile, Alabama from Michigan. Her first hurricane. Didn't like it much.
We're on the third story of an apartment, so I'm hoping that the roof isn't blown off or anything. I'm sure the windows are probably blown out and stuff.
Hurricane Katrina killed 2 people in Alabama at least, 1 other in Louisiana by last count. The storm, now downgraded to a Category 1, hit land early and spent the day blasting the Gulf states with a mix of strong wind and heavy rains. Kathleen Blanco is governor of Louisiana.
While we're praying hard for the victims, our emergency service personnel are working right now at this minute on search and rescue operations across southeast Louisiana.
Some people said to be on top of their roofs because of the high water. ABC's Jim Ryan has more from New Orleans.
At least for tonight, New Orleans will not be living up to its party reputation. The power is still out all across the city. The water may soon be contaminated because pumps are run by electricity. The phones are out. The utilities are all down. New Orleans is not likely to be a party town again for some time.
ABC's Jim Ryan. President Bush says he's thinking about the victims, too.
This was a terrible storm. It's a storm that hit with a lot of ferocity. It's a storm now that is moving through, and now it's the time for governments to help people get their feet on the ground.
With more, we're live with ABC's Ann Compton, who's traveling with President Bush.
Sherry, one way the government can help everyone is soften the impact on oil prices. Katrina choked off 90% of Louisiana's production. Offshore rigs are evacuated. The White House confirms President Bush may quickly decide to release some of the government's emergency reserve. Sherry?
ABC's Ann Compton live with the president in California. As for insurance, this could be the most expensive storm on record. By some estimates, insurance companies could be forced to pay up to $20 billion. You're listening to ABC News.
Blasted into land at daybreak with 145-mile-an-hour winds. Katrina now barely a hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour sustained winds. ABC's Jim Ryan's in New Orleans.
No, it wasn't a direct hit on New Orleans, but the damage has been done. A section of a levee holding back a canal gave way, sending 3 to 8 feet of water into the surrounding neighborhood. Some people are said to be stranded on their roofs because their homes are flooded. And every square inch of the street seems to have some kind of debris, including, as I found on a walk near the French Quarter, Mardi Gras beads. This is, after all, New Orleans.
Need help? Here's President Bush from California.
For those of you who prayed for the folks in that area, I want to thank you for your prayers. For those of you who are concerned about whether or not we're prepared to help, don't be. We are. We're in place. We've got equipment in place, supplies in place, and once we're able to assess the damage, we'll be able to move in and help those good folks in the affected areas.
Larry Jacobs, ABC News.